The creation, when all begins. Out of his power and love, he spoke, and the heavens and the earth came into existence. Light broke through the darkness, seas and skies took shape, and land brought forth every kind of plant. The sun, moon, and stars were set in place to rule the day and night. Birds filled the skies, fish swam in the seas, and every animal walked the land. Finally, God created humanity male and female in his own image, giving them dignity, purpose, and dominion over creation. God looked at all he had made and declared it very good. Adam and Eve in Eden. God placed Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, a place of perfect peace and fellowship with him. They were free to enjoy every tree and every blessing, but he gave them one command: not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In this, God tested their trust and obedience. Eden was a picture of God's perfect design for humanity life in harmony with the Creator. The fall of man. But temptation entered through the serpent, who twisted God's words and lured Eve into disobedience. She took the forbidden fruit and shared it with Adam. And in that moment, sin entered the world. Their eyes were opened, shame and guilt overcame them, and fellowship with God was broken. From then on, humanity would struggle with sin and separation from the Holy One. Cain and Abel. Adam and Eve's children, Cain and Abel, brought offerings to God. Abel's offering of faith was accepted, but Cain's was not. Jealousy burned in Cain's heart, and he struck down his brother in the field. Sin, once planted, had now borne deadly fruit. Yet even in judgment, God showed mercy, preserving Cain's life as a sign that his justice is always tempered with grace. Noah and the flood. As generations passed, the earth was filled with violence and corruption. God saw that mankind's thoughts were only evil continually. In sorrow, he declared judgment through a great flood, but he chose Noah, a righteous man, to build an ark and preserve life. With faith, Noah obeyed, constructing a massive vessel despite ridicule. When the waters came, only Noah's family and the animals in the ark were saved. The covenant of the rainbow. After the flood waters receded, God made a covenant with Noah. He placed a rainbow in the sky as a promise never again to destroy the earth by flood. This covenant showed God's faithfulness and his desire to preserve humanity despite their sinfulness. It was a reminder that God's mercy would endure until the ultimate plan of salvation was revealed, the Tower of Babel. But even after God's mercy, mankind grew proud once again. They gathered on the plains of Shinar to build a tower that reached the heavens, seeking to make a name for themselves rather than honor God. In judgment, God confused their language, scattering them across the earth. From that day forward, nations and languages were born, showing humanity's limits apart from God. The call of Abraham. In the midst of this scattered world, God chose one man, Abraham. He called Abraham to leave his homeland and go to a land that God would show him. God made a covenant, promising Abraham that his descendants would be as countless as the stars, and that through his family, all nations of the earth would be blessed. Abraham believed, and his faith was counted as righteousness. The test of Isaac. Years later, God tested Abraham's faith by asking him to offer his beloved son Isaac as a sacrifice. Abraham obeyed, climbing Mount Moriah with Isaac, trusting God's promise even in confusion. At the final moment, God provided a ram in Isaac's place. This test revealed Abraham's complete trust in God, and it foreshadowed the ultimate sacrifice God himself would one day provide through his son. The foundation of God's story. From creation to Abraham, the foundation of God's great story was laid. We see his power in creation, his justice against sin, his mercy in covenant, and his faithfulness to his promises. This is not just ancient history. It is the beginning of the plan that leads to redemption through Christ. The Old Testament is filled with captivating stories from creation to the birth of Jesus, Let's revisit the highlights of Exodus to Judges in under 6 minutes. Part 2. Israel in Egypt. Generations after Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the children of Israel grew into a great nation in Egypt. But over time, a new Pharaoh rose who did not remember Joseph, and he enslaved the people of Israel. Their lives became bitter with hard labor, building cities and working the fields under cruel masters. Yet even in their suffering, God did not forget his people. He heard their cries and remembered his covenant. The call of Moses. God chose a man named Moses to lead Israel out of bondage. From a burning bush that blazed but was not consumed, God spoke to Moses on Mount Horeb. He revealed his holy name. I am who I am. Though Moses felt weak and unworthy, God promised to be with him, showing that deliverance would not come by human strength, but by divine power. The plagues and the Passover. Through Moses and Aaron, God brought 10 mighty plagues upon Egypt, showing his power over Pharaoh and the false gods of the land. The Nile turned to blood, locusts devoured the fields, and darkness covered the land. Finally, the last plague struck the death of every firstborn in Egypt. But God provided salvation for his people through the blood of the Lamb placed on their doorposts. Death passed over those houses, foreshadowing the greater salvation to come through Christ, the Lamb of God. The crossing of the Red Sea. At last, Pharaoh let the Israelites go, but he quickly pursued them with his army. Trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's chariots, the people cried out in fear. Yet God commanded Moses to stretch out his staff, and the waters parted, forming walls on each side. Israel crossed safely on dry ground, but when the Egyptians followed, the waters closed over them. God delivered his people with a mighty hand, proving that nothing is impossible for him. The 10 Commandments. After their deliverance, God led his people to Mount Sinai. Thunder and lightning covered the mountain as his presence descended in fire. From the mountain, God gave his holy law, the 10 Commandments, written on stone tablets by his own hand. These commandments revealed God's holiness and showed the people how to live in covenant with him and with one another. The golden calf. But while Moses was on the mountain, the people grew impatient. They made a golden calf and bowed down to worship it, forgetting the God who had just delivered them. Sin had once again turned their hearts from the Lord. Moses came down in anger, breaking the tablets as a symbol of their broken covenant. Yet even in this rebellion, God extended mercy, renewing his promise and continuing to guide them. Wandering in the wilderness. Because of their lack of faith, the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. They grumbled for food and water, yet God provided manna from heaven and water from the rock. By day, he led them with a pillar of cloud, and by night with a pillar of fire. In the wilderness, God taught them dependence, shaping them into a people who would trust his provision. Joshua and the Promised Land. After Moses' death, leadership passed to Joshua, a man of courage and faith. God commanded him to be strong and courageous, promising that he would be with him as he had been with Moses. Joshua led Israel across the Jordan River into the Promised Land. At Jericho, the walls fell when the people marched in faith and blew their trumpets, proving that victory comes not by might, but by obedience to God. The time of the judges. Even after entering the Promised Land, Israel struggled to remain faithful. Again and again, they turned to idols and fell under oppression. Yet whenever they cried out, God raised up judges leaders like Deborah, Gideon, and Samson, who delivered them from their enemies. Each time the people experienced God's mercy, but soon after, they returned to disobedience, trapped in a cycle of sin and redemption. If you like this video, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel to reach more people who need a message like this. Soon you will get access to the second part of this interesting topic about the Old Testament, the Judges and Kings. See us soon. God bless you all.